You're standing in your kitchen and you've lost your keys. Without deciding to, you hear it. A voice. Okay, where did I put them? Maybe it stays trapped inside your skull. Maybe it slips out loud into the empty room. Either way, there's no one else there. And you're talking to them anyway. You do this constantly. You mutter to yourself in the shower. You rehearse arguments in the car. You narrate your own cooking like a show no one is watching. You count steps under your breath. You catch yourself saying, okay, 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 before something hard. And you assume that voice is just you, thinking, the natural, private sound of your own mind. But the real answer is far stranger. That voice isn't you thinking. It's something you learned. It's a conversation that used to happen out loud, in a room full of other people, that you slowly folded inward until no one in the world could hear it but you. The voice in your head was never fully yours to begin with. Almost 100 years ago in the Soviet Union, a psychologist named Lev Vygotsky sat and watched children. That was the whole method. He just watched them, closely, for years. And he noticed something everyone on Earth had seen 1,000,000 times and no one had bothered to explain. Small children talk to themselves, out loud, constantly. A 4-year-old builds a block tower and narrates the entire thing. Put this one here, no, big one first, there. There's no audience. There's no one to perform for. The child is simply speaking their own thoughts into the air as fast as the thoughts arrive. Vygotsky called this private speech, and inside it he spotted a pattern. The harder the task became, the more the child talked. Hand a child something easy and they fall silent. Hand them something difficult and the narration comes pouring out. The talking wasn't a habit or a quirk, it was a tool. The child was using their own voice out loud to steer their own mind. And then, somewhere around the age of 7, it goes quiet. The out-loud narration fades, the muttering stops, and almost everyone assumes the child simply grew out of a childish thing. But Vygotsky saw it completely differently. The speech didn't vanish, it went underground. It sank below the surface of the mouth and kept running silently, where no one could hear it anymore, not even, most of the time, the person doing it. That silent, buried voice has a name: inner speech. And it is the thing reading these exact words to you right now. So think about what that actually means. The voice in your head is a kind of fossil. It's the ghost of a voice that once filled a room out loud. Every single time you talk yourself silently through a problem, you are doing the precise same thing that 4-year-old did at full volume. You've just learned to do it without moving your lips. And you never fully stop doing it out loud either. Watch yourself the next time something gets hard. You'll mutter while you parallel park. You'll talk to the furniture instructions. You'll whisper the phone number so you don't lose it before you dial. The childhood voice never left. It just waits for the moments your mind needs the extra help, and then it climbs back out of your mouth. There's even hard proof that the voice does something real. A psychologist named Lupyan ran an experiment where people had to find a specific object hidden in a cluttered scene. When they said the name of the object out loud while searching, just whispering, "banana, banana," to themselves, they found it faster. The voice wasn't noise. Saying the word sharpened the eye looking for the thing. Talking to yourself, it turns out, can quietly make you better at the task in front of you. But where does the voice get its words? Where does it get its shape? A modern psychologist named Charles Fernyhough has spent his career chasing exactly that. He runs a research group in England devoted entirely to the voices inside people's heads. And one of his central findings is quietly unsettling once you notice it in yourself. Your inner voice has the shape of a conversation. Listen to it. Really listen right now. You don't only narrate, you ask yourself questions, then you answer them. You argue with yourself. You talk yourself into things and then talk yourself back out. You give yourself a pep talk, and then a second voice sneers at the pep talk. There are at least 2 of you in there, and they take turns speaking. Fernyhough describes inner speech as dialogic, which just means it runs like a dialogue, a back and forth between 2 speakers. But here is the strange part. There is only one of you in your head. So where did the second voice come from? The people around you talked to you without stopping. They told you to be careful. They asked you what you were doing and why. They praised you, corrected you, warned you, questioned you, comforted you. And slowly, without ever choosing to, you absorbed all of it. You took the outside chorus of parents and teachers and older siblings, and you pulled it inward, and you began running it yourself. That's why the voice that scolds you when you spill something so often sounds like a parent. That's why the voice that doubts you can sound, word for word, like someone who doubted you a very long time ago. You didn't invent your inner critic. You inherited it. You're still hearing people who may not even be in your life anymore. But here is where it gets stranger still. You almost certainly assume that voice never switches off, that your mind is a radio with no off button, narrating from the second you open your eyes in the morning. It isn't. A researcher named Russell Hurlburt built an entire method just to test this. He hands people a small beeper. At completely random moments throughout their day, it goes off. And the instant it does, the person freezes and writes down exactly what was in their experience in the moment right before the beep. Not what they assume is usually there, what was genuinely there in that frozen instant. And the results stunned almost everyone. Inner speech showed up far less often than people swore it did. Sometimes there were words, yes, but just as often there were only images, or raw feelings with no language attached, or a kind of silent, wordless knowing. The constant narration that people are certain runs all day long turned out to be full of gaps and silence. You think the voice never stops talking. The truth is, it's quiet most of the time, and you only ever notice the moments it speaks. And then there are the people for whom the voice does not speak at all. For a long time, this seemed almost impossible to believe. But recent research has finally confirmed it, and even given it a name. Some people have no inner voice whatsoever. None. They do not hear words inside their heads. They never have. When they think in pictures, in pure concepts, in meaning with no sound stitched to it. Researchers call this anendophasia, which simply means the absence of inner speech. Sit with that for a moment. For your entire life, you quietly assumed every other human walked around with a narrator just like yours. But some of the people closest to you have spent their whole lives in total mental silence, and they assumed the same thing in reverse, that everyone was as quiet inside as they are. Two people can sit in one room, think about the very same thing at the very same moment, and one of them hears a voice while the other hears nothing at all. And for most of human history, neither one of them ever knew the difference existed. So what is this voice actually for? Why would your mind go to the trouble of building a narrator at all? The answer reaches back to what language even is. Language did not evolve so that you could think. It evolved so that you could coordinate with other people, to plan the hunt together, to shout a warning about the predator in the grass, to pass down what your grandmother learned the hard way so that you wouldn't have to learn it by dying. Speech is a social tool, designed from the ground up for an audience of others. Talking to yourself is taking that deeply social tool and aiming it at an audience of exactly one. When you rehearse a hard conversation before you have it, you're running a private simulation of another person. When you talk yourself step by step through building something, you're using language to pin the steps in place so they can't slip away. When you mutter, "Don't forget the milk," you are firing a message across time to a future version of yourself. The voice lets you be your own teacher, your own planner, your own warning system, your own tribe of one. You took the thing your species uses to think together, and you taught yourself to use it to think alone. And there's one more job the voice quietly does, maybe the most important one of all. It's how you stop yourself. In the half-second between an impulse and an action, a single word can land in your own voice. Don't. That word is the whole reason you didn't send the message, didn't say the thing, didn't reach for the second one. The narrator isn't only describing your life. Sometimes it's the one thing standing between you and the version of you with no breaks. But that same voice has a dark side,
the narrator does not
and
always
you already
help.
know it intimately.
Sometimes it turns and faces you. It loops. It replays the embarrassing thing you said 9 years ago in perfect detail. It rehearses disasters that have not happened and probably never will. At 3 in the morning, the exact voice that was built to guide you becomes the precise reason you cannot sleep. A psychologist named Ethan Kross studies this directly, what he calls chatter, the inner voice gone wrong, trapped in a spinning loop of worry and self-attack. And his research uncovered something almost too simple to be true, a way to quiet the spiral that has been hiding inside your own grammar the entire time. When you talk to yourself, change the word you use for yourself. Most people narrate in the first person. I can't do this. I'm going to mess it up. I always do. Kross found that when people instead spoke to themselves using their own name, or even just the word you, as in, you can do this, you've handled worse than this before, something measurably shifted. The same voice, pointed in the same direction, suddenly steadied. People who used this small trick right before a stressful moment performed better. They felt less anxious. They calmed down faster afterward. It works because of distance. When the voice says I, it's trapped inside the storm right alongside you, drowning in it. When the voice says you, it steps back a pace, like a coach standing on the sideline instead of a player taking the hit. Same voice, almost the exact same words, a single pronoun of difference, and it completely changes who that voice gets to be for you. So the next time you catch yourself talking to yourself, notice what is truly happening there. That's not a quirk. That's not a sign of anything strange about you. That is 100,000 years of human language, folded down small enough to fit inside one human skull. It's the chorus of every person who ever taught you to speak, still speaking, long after most of them have gone silent. You started all of this believing the voice in your kitchen was simply you, just your own private mind, talking to no one in an empty room. But you were never talking to no one. You were talking to everyone who ever taught you a single word. Every parent who corrected you. Every teacher who questioned you. Every voice you ever heard and quietly carried inside without realizing you'd kept it. The voice in your head was never an empty room. It is the most crowded room you will ever stand in.